When we think about powerful empires in history, we usually imagine conquest armies marching across borders, cities falling under siege, and foreign lands being absorbed into expanding territories. Power, in most cases, meant control through force. But what if one of the most influential civilizations in history chose a completely different path? For centuries, Imperial China stood at the center of a vast regional order, shaping the politics, economies, and cultures of neighboring states without building a traditional overseas empire like those of Europe. It did not rely on permanent occupation or widespread colonization. Instead, it created something far more subtle, and in many ways more effective. Across East and Southeast Asia, kings and envoys traveled great distances to stand before the Chinese emperor, bringing gifts and performing rituals that acknowledged his supremacy. To an outside observer, this may look like submission, but the reality was far more complex. This was not just dominance. It was design, a carefully constructed system of diplomacy, trade, and symbolic power, one that allowed China to influence an entire region without ruling it directly. This was the tribute system. How did this system convince independent kingdoms to accept a subordinate role? And why did so many rulers willingly participate in it generation after generation? To answer that, we must first understand how China saw the world itself. At the core of the tribute system was a powerful and deeply rooted worldview known as Tianxia, concept that framed the entire world as a single ordered system under heaven. In this vision, China was not just one state among many. It was the cultural and moral center of civilization. The Chinese emperor, known as the Son of Heaven, was believed to hold a unique position as the intermediary between heaven and earth. His authority was not merely political but cosmic, tied to maintaining harmony and balance in the world. Within this framework, other regions were not necessarily seen as enemies or rivals. Instead, they were understood as part of a broader hierarchy. Some were closer to Chinese civilization and therefore more refined, while others were considered more distant or less culturally developed. What mattered most was not direct control over these regions, but their recognition of China's central role. Order, in this sense, came not from borders or armies, but from shared acknowledgement of hierarchy. And this belief would shape one of the most enduring diplomatic systems in history. The tribute system was not a formal empire with written constitutions or fixed laws. Instead, it operated through a complex network of rituals, customs, and expectations that governed interactions between China and other states. Foreign rulers would send official missions to the Chinese court, bearing tribute gifts that symbolized respect and acknowledgement of the emperor's status. These offerings varied widely, ranging from rare animals and precious materials to regional specialties unique to each kingdom. Upon arrival, these envoys participated in carefully choreographed ceremonies. The most significant of these was the Kowtow, a formal act of kneeling and bowing that demonstrated submission to the emperor. From the Chinese perspective, this ritual confirmed the moral and political order of the world. It reinforced the idea that all under heaven recognized the emperor's supreme position. However, the meaning of these rituals was not always shared. Many participating states viewed them not as acts of true submission, but as diplomatic formalities, symbolic gestures necessary to maintain beneficial relations. In this way, the tribute system functioned through a delicate balance of perception. China saw hierarchy. Others often saw opportunity. Beneath its ceremonial surface, the tribute system was deeply intertwined with trade. In fact, for many states, economic incentives were the primary reason for participation. Imperial China tightly controlled foreign trade, limiting who could access its markets. Tribute missions provided a rare and valuable gateway into this system. By participating, foreign states gained permission to trade in Chinese ports, opening access to one of the largest and most prosperous economies in the world. Even more striking was the imbalance in exchange. The Chinese court often returned gifts of greater value than those it received. Silk, silver, porcelain, and luxury goods were bestowed upon visiting envoys, sometimes exceeding the worth of the original tribute. This created a system where participation was not only politically advantageous, but economically rewarding. For many kingdoms, the benefits far outweighed the symbolic cost of acknowledging Chinese superiority. As a result, what appeared to be a hierarchy of submission often functioned as a mutually beneficial trade network, one carefully managed by China. The reach of the tribute system extended across a vast region, connecting diverse cultures and political systems. Among its most consistent participants was Korea. Its rulers maintained close and regular relations with the Chinese court, often adopting Chinese cultural and administrative practices. Vietnam also engaged deeply with the system, though its relationship was more complex. While it acknowledged Chinese authority in formal settings, it fiercely protected its independence and identity. Japan participated more selectively, at times embracing the system, and at other times distancing itself, depending on its internal political dynamics. Beyond these, numerous kingdoms across Southeast Asia entered into tributary relations, each navigating the system in ways that best served their own interests. This flexibility was one of the system's defining features. It allowed different states to interpret and engage with it on their own terms, ensuring its longevity across centuries. What made the tribute system truly unique was how it redefined power. Unlike European empires such as Britain or Spain, which expanded through colonization and military occupation, China relied on influence rather than direct control. This approach reduced the need for costly military campaigns and long-term garrisons in foreign lands. Instead of imposing authority, China cultivated it through prestige, cultural attraction, and economic dominance. Foreign rulers were not forcibly integrated into a Chinese empire. They remained in power, governing their own territories. But by participating in the tribute system, they became part of a broader order centered on China. It was a form of soft power long before the term existed. For centuries, it worked remarkably well. The stability of the tribute system depended on shared assumptions, particularly the acceptance of hierarchy. But when new powers entered the region, those assumptions began to break down. European states, influenced by ideas of sovereignty and equality between nations, did not see themselves as subordinate to any empire. This clash of worldviews became evident during the Macartney Embassy, when British representatives sought to establish direct diplomatic relations with China. The refusal to fully participate in Chinese rituals, particularly the Kowtow, led to tension and misunderstanding. To the Chinese court, this was a failure to respect established order. To the British, it was a matter of national dignity. This moment revealed a deeper conflict, not just between nations, but between fundamentally different concepts of international relations. By the 19th century, the global balance of power had shifted dramatically. Industrialization in Europe brought new technologies, stronger militaries, and a more aggressive approach to expansion. The tribute system, built on ritual and controlled exchange, struggled to adapt to this new reality. Conflicts such as the Opium Wars exposed the limitations of China's traditional system. Forced into unequal treaties and open trade under foreign pressure, China could no longer maintain its central position in the same way. Gradually, the tribute system dissolved it, because it had ceased to function internally, but because the world around it had transformed beyond recognition. Although the tribute system formally ended, its influence did not disappear entirely. Elements of its philosophy, emphasizing relationships, economic ties, and symbolic recognition, continue to shape China's approach to global affairs, rather than relying solely on military power. Modern China often focuses on building networks of influence through trade, investment, and diplomacy. While the context has changed, the underlying idea remains familiar. Power can be exercised not just through control, but through connection. The tribute system challenges one of our most basic assumptions about history, that dominance must be achieved through conquest. For centuries, China demonstrated an alternative model, a system where influence was maintained through ritual, sustained through trade, and reinforced by perception. It was not without flaws. It relied on hierarchy and could create misunderstandings. But it was also one of the most sophisticated and enduring diplomatic systems the world has ever seen. So when we think about power in the modern world, we might ask, is true dominance about forcing others to follow? Or is it about building a system where they choose to?